a doctor of physical therapy, and I'm also someone who struggles with joint hypermobility and instability. Specifically, I have a condition called hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. This hypermobility can cause a host of other related issues like fatigue, anxiety, gut issues, bowel issues, migraines, you name it. I wanted to create these videos to share the tips, the tricks, the resources that have helped me get my life back over the years. These are not official medical or PT advice, so please always consult your local healthcare provider before making any changes. Thank you. Hi everyone, so today I'm going to cover one of my favorite exercises. It's the Transverse Abdominus activation and strengthening exercise. This was a huge light bulb moment for me in my recovery, and I've seen it be the same for a lot of patients. Basically, a lot of us know that our core is important, but we're not using our core correctly. I think even some of the cues intended for yoga and Pilates that can be really helpful for a lot of the population may not be as helpful when you're hypermobile and unstable, or at least you need to learn this concept first. So we have a lot of different core muscles. We have our six-pack core muscles here on the outside, that rectus abdominis. You have your obliques that connect this way. And then you have your transverse abdominis, which is the only muscle that wraps horizontally here. So it wraps all the way from the back. It connects to the upper hip bones, the lower rib cage, and comes around to the middle. So when it's activated correctly, it actually can work like one of those lumbar braces that helps create stability. Basically, our core is supposed to work like a closed pressure system. So picture a sealed Coke can that's a cylinder. So my pelvic floor, which I'll cover more in detail in later videos, is the bottom of the can. The diaphragm is the top of the can. And that transverse abdominis is the sides of the can, not really the six-pack muscles. So the core is supposed to be that sealed Coke can, really strong. But if it has a bulge in it, whether that's the pelvic floor or these muscles or diaphragm not working correctly or a slit, it's very easy to compress and to crush, right? So out of that closed, sealed system, that allows us the stability to then move our limbs with a lot more strength and stability and not risk dislocating, subluxation, pain, and compensation patterns. The other thing is that I think a lot of us, maybe we're trying to suck the gut in all day, so we're over-activating these top fibers of the transverse abdominis and the rectus, and we're forgetting about these lower fibers. Really, you want to be able to isolate the lower fibers here at the hip level so that you can, like right now I have them active, and I can still breathe through my diaphragm. If you have a question about why that's important, see my video on diaphragm breathing, but breathing here is super important, not just for your breath and getting air, but for your nervous system and your anxiety levels and your neck pain. So the way to activate this muscle, always start laying down on a firm surface. This is actually a little squishier than I recommend. And you're going to use this as a tool. So this is a Gaiam Strong Core and Back Kit. I love this tool, but recently it's been out of stock, some on Amazon. I'll provide the link. The other thing that works is a Franklin mini roll, but it's filled with air, and so it's going to provide feedback on us for pelvic stability. Right now, I'll set it aside. So just working on activation, you're going to find those most pointy part of your hip bones that stick straight up here. Bring 2 fingers and roll them onto the inside of those hip bones. Press in lightly, and then move just about an inch up toward your belly button from there. There should be a little divot that you might fall into there. So I'm just pressing lightly. That's just for feedback. And now I'm going to picture 2 headlights pointing up out of those hip bones straight at the ceiling. And I'm going to find a muscle that when I activate it, tilts those headlights toward each other. So this direction. As I activate that muscle, I should feel a strong, harder surface coming up into my fingers. At the beginning, if it's weak or you're not good at activating it, it may just be a subtle flicker of movement up into your fingers. Again, I'm not pushing down with my fingers to feel it, just letting them sink in, and you should feel that activation. You should notice too a little bit of a sense of the hip bones being drawn together, both in the front and the back. Now notice when I'm doing this, I get a little bit of activation here at the rib cage, but I'm not really working on overlacing my ribs together because that's going to not allow my diaphragm to move. So it should be mostly felt here, belly button and below for this part. I also am not closing my glottis up here to create air pressure down to falsely create that sense of pressure. You want to still be able to move and talk as you use this throughout the day. So to test yourself, maybe try humming or making sure you can breathe. You could put one hand here and one hand here as you're activating. So right now I'm going to practice turning it on and off. I want you to get to the point where you can turn it on or off 10 or 15 times without feeling a lot of compensations or shrugging up in the rest of your body, and where you can still breathe through your diaphragm, each time holding it for a few seconds. Then at the end of that, I encourage you to try turning it on, holding it, and I'm just going to hold it for about 20 seconds while I breathe. You'll notice it wanting to turn off, which is normal at first, but you want to try to keep it on for this exercise. You may notice it stronger in one side versus the other. That's a good sign that this is the right exercise that you need to be doing. Just really work on trying to activate it equally. Once I've done that for 20 seconds, I can be done. So that's just activation. A lot of people, including myself when I started this, have to stay on that for a week or two before they just really get the hang of activating. If once you get the hang of that, or if you're someone who feels like you really get the hang of it fast, you can move on to the strengthening portion. So for that, you get this peanut. If you don't have this, you can do it without it, but try to picture what a wobbly surface would feel like underneath there. As you get a little more advanced, you can get a deflated Pilates ball as well and put it right in the middle if it's comfortable. I'm going to put this under my sacrum, so the top of my butt. I'm not arching over it on my low back. So it's kind of a little below my belt line. Shouldn't be arching the back at all. Let me try to see where that is there. Again, bringing my hands here. This time I'm going to cross my hands over, still have my fingers in the same spot so that my elbows don't help me stabilize. Activate those muscles. And I'm going to push down lightly into my left leg and pull my right leg up into this 90 degree angle here. And then push back down slowly. Then I'm going to switch sides. So pushing lightly into the right side, that should help that muscle activate as well. Always make sure you have the activation of these muscles first, and then come on. As you do these, you may notice your six-pack muscles and obliques starting to kick on. That's okay. But again, the transverse should be your prime mover and go first. If it's working correctly, you'll never notice that bulge in the middle, because the bulge means that the transverse is off and the rest of them are doing the work. So you've lost that closed system and the core is too big. So 90 degrees, and back down. Depending on your body and where you're at, this may feel more like strengthening. It may feel more like motor control and activation training. Either is fine. Later, I'll show you progressions that will really get into the strengthening. You want to do 2 sets of 15 at least, or to the point where you're feeling a little bit of a burn in those muscles, like they're actually getting a workout. Finally, after you've been doing that for a week or two and are pretty comfortable, you'll progress to this last one that you can eventually start. I like to have a progression where you do a few of all three. Same thing, crossing my arms, activating here, making sure I'm not shrugging my shoulders and I'm breathing correctly. Feel the transverse abdominis activate, push lightly into my left leg. Now I'm going to straighten my right leg out slowly, and I'm going to hover it just about a ½ inch off. Again, staying totally level on the peanut. Don't let yourself wobble at all on there. And then come back up. Pushing lightly into the right. Hover and come back up. As your leg starts to get lower, you'll feel the activation wrapping toward the back, or you should. And maybe even getting some of those muscles right along the spine that helps stabilize. That's a good thing. That's kind of what you're going for with that one. And then you'll come up. Again, if these are causing any pain in your hips, feel free to modify as you feel is wise, or just don't do it. Just sit there and do the activation exercise and work on starting to find that muscle in your daily activities. So right now when I'm sitting, I'll work on turning it on and off a little bit. Again, I can still breathe. That's the trick for a lot of people. Or maybe when I'm reaching for something or twisting for the seatbelt, having it on first, you'll notice that sense of stability. It should be comforting for your nervous system and for your body. I'll cover more about how to use this in sitting and standing later, but I hope that's helpful, and I will see y'all soon.